I'm delighted to be here, and we look forward to a lively afternoon. Now we are ready to start with the library board candidates, and we have everyone here with the exception of Carole Shawns, and Scot Butler has not appeared at this point. If he comes in, we will seat him. I'm not sure what we'll do about his opening statement if we're already in the middle of questions, but we'll manage that when it happens. So Carole, if you would begin, and then we'll go down the line. Everyone has a minute and a half to make an opening statement.
Thank you. I'm Carole, better known as Cal Stroh, and I have lived at 330 Ravine Forest Drive since 1974. Prior to that, my husband and I lived at the Naval Base. I'm a retired teacher, having taught on every level from preschool to university over a period of 50 years. Mostly I taught Latin and Spanish and English. If I am elected, this will be my third term as a library trustee, and the reason I'm running for a third term is in order to maintain some continuity on the board due to the fact that we have had trustees resign because they moved out of the area or whatever. It will end up that the only current trustee not running this year has been on the board 2 years, and then there's myself. So mostly to maintain some continuity is the reason that I am running.
Thank you for your statement, Mr. Kregor. Timothy Kregor.
Good afternoon. My name is Tim Kregor. My wife Wendy and I have lived in Lake Bluff for 14 years. We live over at 38 Forest Hills Road by the Bath and Tennis Club area over there. Have 2 grown children that both live in Chicago, graduates of the high school here, so I've been here for a good part of their lives. My career has been in business. I've 35 plus years in marketing and marketing research. The bulk of that was with Kraft Foods and Nielsen, a research company. So larger companies, and so my background brings that kind of a business experience. That's what I can bring to the board, and that's what I think that acumen is helpful. The reason I joined the board last August, filling in for one of the vacancies that Cal mentioned. So 8 months, whatever that is, on the board, and enjoyed the experience a lot. And I think my primary value is to try and give something back to the community and use wealth and business experience to be able to help inform the decisions of the board for a very, very good institution. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Wojda.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Romain Wojda. My wife and my 2 children and I have been residing in Lake Bluff for just over 5 years. I am currently on the library board. I'm filling a term that was incomplete due to a trustee moving away. I've presently been on the board for about a year and a half. Currently my job status is I work for Discover Financial Services. I work as a project manager for the subsidiary of Diners Club International. My employment history has ranged from consulting to manufacturing and also to the financial industry. With the work we're doing currently as a board, it's an exciting time for the library. We have a newer director. We're entering into an age of whether you still stay with print or what are you doing with digital media. And those are the things that are top of mind for the board as we're working forward now. And I wish to continue that work with the current director and the returning board members. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Stanley Hickory.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, Madam President, distinguished candidates, and guests. My name is Stanley Hickory. I've lived at 320 Hearst Court for about 40 years. I'm a graduate of Northwestern University, Business Administration, and a member of the American Society of Mechanical Engineers. Let's see, what else can I do? A member of the American Legion. I've served on the fire department in the past, and also became an emergency medical technician. My family grew up here, and a certain principal hired my son to be a teacher in this community, and I've served on the board for about 7 years, and I'd like to serve again. I think I could add to it, bring all the experiences of my life. I worked for the government for about 25 years in various capacities. I was involved in the construction of federal buildings. Biggest one was 40 stories high. My jurisdiction area covered the United States.
Can you
I'm
put the
retired now.
microphone just a little bit
Okay,
closer?
I'm retired now, and I have the time to devote my time to the board. And I'd like to leave the board a little bit better, and the library a little bit better than I found it. Thank you.
Thank you. We don't have any questions posed at this time, so I will take the liberty of asking a few questions. We'll begin with Carole Stroh. Perhaps you could discuss what you think are the issues in front of the library board currently and what issues there might be going forward.
One of the issues in front of the library board currently is, as has been mentioned, that we're into a digital age. And so we have to provide our community not only with hardcover books, but with the means to access books digitally and over the internet and so on. Another issue coming up is because we did a renovation of the library and we changed the entrance, the main entrance, so then we had to fix the landscaping for that, and we've accomplished that. But now there's the other side, the part that's in front of the wood building, in front of the Lake Bluff Museum. And so currently we are beginning to work on that.
And Mr. Kregor, would you like to answer that same question?
Yeah, I'll just put a little add to what Cal just mentioned. The balance points are going to be interesting. The library is in a fortunate position of being in a pretty good funding position. But the balance points between, say, adding to the physical plant versus how much we put into digital medium or increase server capacity or ways that we can expand distribution of electronic medium, those are the kind of trade-offs the board's going to be facing. And it is a very interesting time. We're not in any dire strait, so it's more of a matter of how you do that balance over time and make sure that we make decisions that are serving the entire community. But I think it's a fortunate position that we're not pressed and we have the ability to think about these issues over time.
Thank you. Mr. Wojda.
Yeah, I will echo Tim in the same comments. As we're moving forward, we're fortunate that the library is in fiscally a good position, and with the current board and the board previous to that, their activities had helped greatly to that. We do have to be cognizant of being responsible in determining the path for the future. Do we invest more in capital improvements to the buildings and grounds, or do we start looking more towards the digital area? And then additionally, those will feed into how it affects the current demographics of our patrons. Right now we see tremendous amount of use by the young children. We see very good use by adults. It's that in-between age where we don't see as much use. So the decisions we make in the future not only have to be about the building and grounds and the future of technology, but how do we continue to capture patrons and we keep them over time.
Thank you. Mr. Hickory.
Well, I think almost all the questions have been answered. When I first ran for the board as an independent candidate, the library had about $30,000 in reserves and $200,000 in debts. We had to put in a new furnace, an air conditioner. The roof leaked, the basement flooded, and the basement stairway was caving in. And the board worked very hard on this, and we actually made a change from a request for funds from the village to an actual tax levy. And that gave us enough money to do all the things that have been done. Okay, and well, I'll just try it. We have a good board and a good library. I will try to maintain it and keep it and improve it in any way I can. So thank you.
And Mr. Kregor, the next question is to you first. Does the library cooperate with other libraries in the area?
Yeah, there's of course the exchange system for books that, you know, if you're have a card with our library, you can check out from a whole network of libraries around the North Shore. So that kind of a sharing where there's a van that moves the facilities back and forth. There's also a lot of learning, cross-learning, that some of it's represented by the state, but where library directors and staff have the ability to connect with each other particularly across the North Shore where you're not having to travel very far. So there is good coordination, and I'd say that's a good thing for us because we're one of the smaller libraries in the North Shore, so extending ourselves in that way, I think it's efficient and useful.
And Mr. Wojda.
Yes, we obviously, as Tim has commented already, we do work widely with the other libraries in the area. I would like to say, the only thing in addition to what Tim has mentioned so far, is that our director has seemed to reach out more and more frequently to more of the libraries in the area, especially on looking at, as we update plans and policies and things like that, to see what sort of benchmarking what's normal in the area for libraries. So it's good to see that he is taking those steps to work with others in the field. Thank you.
And Mr. Hickory.
Well, I have visited other libraries in the area to find out how they did things and what they did, and tried to bring those ideas back to our library for improvements. And that's about as much as I can say about that.
And Ms. Stroh.
The interlibrary loan, the Illinois interlibrary loan, is just a marvelous benefit. I think Tim had spoken to that. As a small library, we tend to borrow more than we lend through that organization, but it's just a godsend. You can get any book from any library in Illinois through interlibrary loan, and it usually takes perhaps 2 days, at most a week or 10 days. It really is helpful.
Thank you. The next question starts with Mr. Wojda. Should there be filters on the computers in the library to protect students?
I believe that access to any material that's on the internet should be allowed. I believe also that there should be some monitoring to make sure that objectionable material is not presented to people who are not familiar with that material or would not appreciate seeing it. I do not believe it's the library's duty to censor or prevent access to materials that people would desire. I do believe, though, that in the event we do have patrons that are looking at materials that may be objectionable to other people, if we notice that we somehow provide them a place where they can do that that will not be disturbing to other patrons. Thank you.
And Mr. Hickory.
Well, I agree with that. I think once you start censoring anything for any reason, you're on a slippery slope. And who can say where it will end? Because someone will always object to everything. So I don't believe in censoring, but I agree with you that if people are looking at something, such as one young man was looking at Virginia's Secrets catalog one day, and we asked him to stop. I asked him to stop. So I'm against censoring in any form, any content. And there's nothing on the library really which it all has to pass the rules to be on the internet. So I believe in open access to everything in the library.
And Ms. Stroh.
Down in the children's section, we do filter appropriately down there on the computers that are used by the little kiddies, and I think that that's appropriate.
And Mr. Kregor.
I'll compliment what everyone on the panel has said. I don't think we should be censoring, but judgment would say that you should restrict access for something like children's computers, and that I think the balance right now seems appropriate. It has not been an issue that's been raised to the board. I've not heard a lot of concern about it, so I think we're operating in a pretty good state.
The next question starts with Mr. Hickory. Does the library have plans for future renovation or expansion?
Well, the library it began the recent expansion while I was on the board. That was one of the things we put into effect when I was previously on the board. And there is one other possibility, which we did discuss. That was on the west side of the library, where that long ramp goes up, using that space to expand the library into that area. It's useless space now, no one uses it. So that was one possibility. Other than that, I don't know of anything else that could be done.
Ms. Stroh?
Our shelving dates from about 35 years ago when the library was built. And there are certain sections of it that are a little bit rickety. And so we need to, for safety's sake, as well as for appearance, we need to replace that shelving with more modern and more stable units. And we are working on that. And the other thing is, perhaps not for 5 years, but we would like to add a room to the library along that west side that Mr. Hickory spoke of.
Mr. Kregor?
Those, beyond the two investments, the shelving, which could be a progressive, moving through different parts of the library and staggered over time, taking the worst out first, as Cal mentioned. The physical plant expansion there on the west side is something that we're only beginning to look at, and I think it's probably going to be some time before we really decide to move on that. The other area is kind of reflecting back on what we spoke of before, not necessarily visible, but upgrading the server capacity. We do run our own servers, so we host our site, and we host the interlibrary system that you actually check out and catalog on. So that is a non-trivial investment potential that we're looking at right now, which may be actually a calendar year 2013 decision.
Mr. Wojda?
Yes, I would mirror the comments of both Tim and Cal and Stanley. But I think in the future, while we have looked at what it would take to do a physical expansion of the library, we need to keep in mind the fiscal responsibility that we have in terms of will we be getting the value for what we'll be spending there? Will it be a worthwhile investment? And that is something that the board and also the staff of the library will be working on throughout our strategic planning and also board meetings to come in the future to determine the future of any kind of expansion of the library. Thank you.
Thank you. And the next question goes back again to Ms. Stroh. How do you feel about the library's policies on privacy and safety?
I don't have any issue with that. We, in the past, there has been, we were a little bit, I think, overly aggressive about the privacy business, so that, for instance, if you called a patron, if a librarian called a patron to tell the patron that something he or she had requested was in, you couldn't tell him what it was. So if I had made requests for both DVDs and books, I couldn't say to the person calling me, oh, did this book or that book come in? That they just couldn't answer that question. I think that was perhaps too aggressive. We don't do that anymore.
Mr. Kregor?
I would say it's something that has really not been a current discussion or issue, at least in the last 8 months that I've been on the board, that it's been an issue of any form. I think the policies are pretty much in balance. I don't have the history that Cal has on that change, but it seems to me that we're appropriate, and I think the community seems to respond to what we have.
Mr. Wojda?
I would mirror what Tim has said also. I've been on the board for just over a year, maybe a year and a half, and issues of safety and or privacy have not come up yet. And honestly, I've not seen anything in the future that would say it will be coming up. But if there is concerns out there, I would urge everyone to let the board know and let the library know so we can discuss it.
And Mr. Hickory?
Well, the library is directly connected to the police department and fire department, so we have those two avenues for safety. And as far as privacy goes, I wonder if it could be something to consider, just a thought, not a recommendation, that there could be some place in the library where people could meet in private. It might be an advantage, could or could not be an advantage. It's something the board, I think, should think about, to have a private place where people could meet in private. Where they couldn't be overheard, but seen. It's just an idea.
And Mr. Hickory, Mr. Kregor, the next question is for you. Do you think the hours of operation for the library are adequate?
As a frequent patron, I find the library access to be very good. I think the only question you might have would be the Sunday closings during the summer period, which I don't think is that big a constraint. But other than that, the fact that we have several evenings of the week that you can go until 9 o'clock, and certainly opening before 10, I don't think is required. So I would say that the hours of operation are good, and they're very available for the community.
Mr. Wojda?
I would agree with that also. I have a couple of young children who use the library frequently, as does my wife, and myself also. And I've never had an issue of needing to be there when it's closed. So I would think that it's quite adequate. I've never heard anybody in the community say that we need to be open longer or closed shorter.
And Mr. Hickory?
Well, the library hours are adequate, but it would be nice if we could add a few hours on Sundays and such to make it more available for people, if it was possible to do so within our budget and such. Meet that facility to have it open for a few hours on weekends or such, like a Sunday afternoon, Sunday morning.
And Ms. Stroh?
I do have an issue with our hours. We are open Monday through Friday until 6 p.m. On Saturday, we close at 4 p.m. On the Sundays that we are open, we close at 5 p.m. There's something about that 4 p.m. Saturday closing that bothers me, mostly because I've ended up there at 4:05 or 4:10 to find that the library is closed. However, I do understand that we have budgetary constraints on keeping the library open. We are only open 2 evenings, Monday and Thursday each week, and I would like us to be open more than that, but I'm not sure we can afford that.
Mr. Wojda, the next question is for you. Do you coordinate any programs with the Lake Bluff schools?
At this point, I believe we do, but I'm not aware of the specifics at this point.
Mr. Hickory?
I'm not aware of any coordination, although the library our doors are always open to work with the school board and the school libraries.
And Ms. Stroh?
Yes, we do coordinate with the schools, more so lately because the schools have their budgetary problems also. We also run a couple of contests for the kids. One is the bookmark making contest, and another is the story writing contest. And we do coordinate with the teachers at the elementary and the junior high. Oh, and they sometimes come and entertain us. The junior high has a marvelous choral program, and they will bring the kids over and serenade us at Christmas time and so on. It's delightful.
Mr. Kregor?
Yeah, well, as Carole said, there are programs, there are levels of coordination. I would say, and this is something that you'll see in our strategic plan, it's an area that I think that we could complement further, particularly as the school faces even, I think, a little more difficult funding situation than the library is, including how many librarians they can afford and how much library access is provided to the children. I think it's an area that we could actually do more. So I don't think it's an enormous issue, but it's an opportunity.
Thank you. Mr. Hickory, the next question goes to you first. What do you think our libraries will look like in 10 or 20 years, and what does the board need to do to prepare for that? For example, do they need more videos, books, computers, notebooks, pads? What is the future library going to look like in 10 to 20 years?
Well, it sounds like predicting the future. And there have been so many changes in the library. The addition of the CDs, the videos, the music discs, our computers, the Wi-Fi. I think as new things are invented day by day, they should be made, the library should provide whatever services it can to take advantages of changes in technology. I'll throw this in as an aside. A number of communities have put in, I'll do it later then. Go ahead.
Oh, you're not done.
You have 30 more seconds. You have 30 more seconds.
Okay,
Mr. Hickory.
sorry, I didn't want to hold it up. But if you park your car in front of the library, you can turn on your laptop and actually access the internet in front of the library. Some communities have expanded that to cover their entire communities with Wi-Fi. I thought, why couldn't the library do the same as other communities have, so that anywhere you are in the village, you could have Wi-Fi access? Another thought, another suggestion.
Ms. Stroh?
What do I think the library will look like in the future? I think it'll still be full of books. But also, it will have more computers or iPads or whatever. I was in the Elmhurst College Library last week, and I was interested in seeing that all around the perimeter of every room in the library were computers. Had a little, remember the old-time desks where you had a seat connected to a desk? Well, they had that, except that on the desk there was a laptop. Also, at the end of every stack, there were 2 or 3 computers. And I think that that's a coming thing. We, however, are constrained by space.
Mr. Kregor?
I'd say if you take the out years and say 20 years from now, what will our library look like? I think it'll look exactly like it does today. With the change of potentially having more kiosks or cubicles, which would have places that you could plug in, probably bring your own laptop in or bring your own, more likely, pad. And the biggest change that we'll see in the way the library facilitates is you might have much more of the physical activity in the library being meetings and sessions and activities, and almost all of, or much larger amount of the actual distribution of matter being electronic.
Mr. Wojda?
I think back 20 years ago, and then I look at a smartphone in my hand, and I think of the change that has happened there. I think it will be very difficult to predict where we will be in 20 years. I think in 10 years we will be well down the road to being more towards a virtual library. The structure will still be there. We will probably still have people there. More activities, more opportunities for interaction. But we may see less. We may see less books. I think if you take a look at what's happened with newspapers, I think newspapers and magazines are going to be wholly online. I think I was in a discussion the other day. If you look at Newsweek magazine, there's no longer a print edition of it. I think you'll see more of that happening. And I think the duty is we need to make sure that we prepare the library for that change, and we need to prepare our staff for that change. We need to prepare the community for that change. And some of that change will be driven by the community and what their needs and wants are.
Thank you. Ms. Stroh, the next question is to you. Mr. Hickory answered that first.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
But thank you for keeping track of me.
Badly.
What percent of the budget should be allocated to the funding of ebooks?
I think that's I think it's progressive. I don't know, frankly, what percentage of our budget is dedicated to ebooks right now, but I do know that it will keep growing. That percentage will keep on escalating, but the exact percentage I can't say.
Mr. Kregor?
Next year's budget calls for, if I remember right, a 60% increase in ebook funding. So we're beginning to move the needle now. It's still more going into physical than electronic, but the shift is beginning, and I think it'll increase over time. And right now, if you look at the overall library budget, you'd be amazed at how little actually goes into procurement of materials. It's mostly staff. It's, you know, so a lot of the budget isn't actually in procurement. So that may be increasing over time as well, but you're always going to have staffing.
Mr. Wojda?
I think the budget will have to shift more and more towards technology as time goes on. As I mentioned previously, if you look at where we've come with technology in the past 10, 20 years to where we could be in the next 10 to 20 years, I think our patrons will really drive where that budget needs to go with the desire of what they would like to see. I'm amazed at, you know, my youngest child, before he could read, he could operate an iPad. And so I think we're going to need to start seeing more of those kind of things coming from the library instead of just hardcover books.
Mr. Hickory?
Well, that's a difficult question because with technology changing so fast and everything coming, I was at the Great Lakes Naval Training Station last night watching a movie. They used to have huge rolls of film, 8 or 10 rolls with projectors and such. Now they get a little tiny box, and the entire movie is in that little box. So technology is changing so fast. I don't think we should commit a lot of money to anything at one time, but do it gradually and slowly move forward. As technology moves, we move one step behind it, but conservatively.
Mr. Kregor, the next question is for you. Are the library's programs for youth and adults well attended?
The attendance data is fairly consistent from what I remember looking at last. The area where you've got the least, I guess, penetration of an audience would be in the teen years. The youth programs are well attended and seem to be well managed. And so I would say if we were to make improvement or to think about where we would focus, it would be into that 12 to 18 range where you don't have as much attendance to programs as maybe we would like. It's not an easy audience. So you have to be, I think, appreciative.
Mr. Wojda.
I believe the attendance at the youth programs are probably the most successful that we have, followed by the adult programs. As Tim mentioned, there is a sort of hole in the middle that we seem to lose them after they get into the 3rd, 4th grade, and then they come back slowly during high school and then an adult. And that's an area of the patrons that we need to focus on. How do we keep the attendance there? How do we make the library a destination spot instead of the local candy store after school, and things like that?
Mr. Hickory?
Well, it's a problem that has been discussed over the past years, 7 years that I was on the board. And we've done everything we could to make the library attractive to the younger people. And it's a dilemma because the problem with children is they grow up. And they go off to different places, do different things. But I think it's an ongoing process of trying to get people to use the library, especially the children. The adults are doing it very well now. So I don't know what more the library could do, because the board's apparently been doing everything it could to make the library attractive to our younger people.
Ms. Stroh?
The attendance at the children's programs is very good. Sometimes we're pushing at the seams of the library. I am not personally familiar with the teen years, except that I do know that Knitting with Eliza is very well attended. There's quite an interest in junior high and high school kids in learning how to knit with Eliza. The adult programs, the attendance is erratic. I go to a lot of the adult programs as a way of keeping tab, but also because some of them are very, very interesting. But the last movie I went to a couple of weeks ago, I was the only one there. And a lot depends, I think, on what the program is, because there will be certain programs where we'll have a room full of people and other programs where we have maybe only 4 or 5 to listen to the person presenting the program. I also think part of it is that our community is overscheduled.
Thank you.
There's many times when I've had to forego going to a library program because I have to go to some other program.
Thank you. This session is scheduled to stop in about 5 minutes. We'll call it 6 minutes, and we'll go to the closing statements. And Mr. Hickory, we will be starting with you for your closing statement for 1.5 minutes.
All right. Well, so much has been said today. In the past, when I served on the board, I would get up at 5 in the morning, get on the train at 6 in the morning, come home at about 7 o'clock, go directly from the train station to the library. It was quite an achievement. Now I'm retired, and I have the leisure time to take more interest in the activities of the library board. And I hope that I will be privileged again to once again serve on the library board. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Ms. Stroh?
I have enjoyed my 8 years as a trustee immensely, and it's a way to pay back, but really, you end up receiving more than you give in paying back. I do think it's good to have some continuity on the board, and so if I am elected, I will serve another 4 years with gusto.
Thank you. Mr. Kregor.
While my tenure's been short at 8 months or whatever on the board, I've enjoyed it a lot. It's a very smart group of people. The library staff is marvelous and has an excellent attitude about serving patrons. So I think we've got a marvelous institution that I would want to help as much as I can. So I hope that I get elected. One other comment on the going forward, since we have a lot of candidates from other boards in Lake Bluff, we really should be thinking a lot more how we coordinate. And right now we operate in little silos. And that's probably, for a community our size, unnecessary. When we have struggle for membership on the boards as much as we do, we really ought to be thinking about how much we can coordinate with each other. And we should do more.
And Mr. Wojda.
I want to thank everyone for the opportunity to speak today. I look back to growing up and what a library meant in my life and my family's life, and how education is very important for all of us. I think the opportunity to serve on the board, or to continue serving on the board for the library, is one that I cherish because I have young children, and I see what it takes for them in school and learning, and I understand the importance of a library, not only to them but to the community as a whole. And so I would welcome those of you who have additional questions, seek me out and we can discuss it. But I do hope that I can be elected to continue the work that we've been doing on the board, and I look forward to another 4 years.
Thank you to all of you. Just so that everyone knows, there are actually 6 candidates and 4 positions that are open on the Lake Bluff Library Board. So you have had an opportunity to see today 4 out of the 6 potential candidates. And on behalf of the League of Women Voters and AAUW, we want to thank you for coming today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome again to the League Forum. This session has to do with the Lake Bluff Village Board. 3 seats are open and there are 4 candidates. Bill Meyer, John Josephitis, Greg Tchamitchian, who is not with us today, and Eric Grenier. So thank you for being with us today. And we will begin with opening statements. Mr. Meyer.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. My name is Bill Meyer, and I seek your vote for village trustee. It's been an honor to serve as your village clerk these last couple of years. I've had the chance to work with the dedicated volunteers who do so much for Lake Bluff, as well as the outstanding staff that the village employs. They all deserve a lot of credit for what they do for all of us. I've lived in Lake Bluff over 7 years now with my wife Jennifer and my son Will, who's 9, and daughter Rosie, who is 5. In terms of what I can bring to the table, I've practiced law for over 2 decades, both as a civil and criminal litigator, and from all of that I'll claim some street smarts and judgment developed over the years. But I'll be the first to admit that I've learned a lot about government from those who are serving Lake Bluff. In my time as clerk, I've observed responsible stewardship, integrity, and civility, and that's the model I intend to follow as trustee. Now, where government is concerned, I have several core beliefs. One tenet is, first of all, do no harm. Build on the shoulders of those who've done good for the village. This means listening to the voters. It means fostering volunteerism. It means setting a good example. It means striving always to be fair and passing the village on in better shape than it was when you took office. The village board has a responsibility to foster economic growth, balance that with preserving the character of the village, meeting the needs of the residents. With all of that, Lake Bluff offers a great opportunity for public service, and I'd be honored to continue to serve and would appreciate your vote.
Thank you. Mr. Josephitis.
Thank you. My name is John Josephitis, and I am running for my 2nd term as Lake Bluff Village Trustee. I've lived in the village for 19 years with my wife Marie, and we have 3 children. Aaron is actually a junior in college now. My son Daniel is a junior at the Lake Forest High School, and my youngest, Andre, is in 7th grade at the Lake Bluff Middle School. I am a small business owner. I own a private health and fitness facility that I run and manage myself. I also manage and lease my small commercial real estate investments, none of which are located in the village of Lake Bluff. I first served my 2-year term with the village as deputy village clerk for 2 years, and I'm finishing up my first 4-year term as village trustee. I currently sit as a member on the Finance Committee, and I also sit as a member on the Downtown and Development Committee. I look forward to another 4-year term because we have many important issues facing the village at this time. For instance, financial sustainability. I think we're going to hear a lot about that in the coming year. We have the new Shepherd Chevrolet property that is vacant now, and Target is looking at that property to develop that. We have old and new residential developments that are coming before the board. The village also has started a branding initiative, which I'm excited to be part of. Was that a minute and a half? Wow. Okay.
Thank you.
I'm done.
Mr. Grenier.
Hi, my name is Eric Grenier. I have been a resident of Lake Bluff since 1994. Originally moved out here from Southern California in 1988 to Lake Forest. And as I said, grew up in Southern California. I lived in Paris, France, all these wonderful places, but Lake Bluff and the North Shore is a world-class part of the world to live in, and we're really excited still to be here after all these years, and all our California relatives staring at us and wondering why we're out here. They learn when they come visit. I am currently CEO of RevZero Incorporated. It's a contract medical device manufacturing company that I helped found in 2007 up in Minneapolis, Minnesota. My life's work has been in medical device manufacturing, starting with Baxter Healthcare and working my way through various companies, mostly in this area. I started the company while I was a member of the school board here in Lake Bluff, which I joined in 2003 and remained on the school board through 2011. I was president of the school board 2007 through 2009 during the period in which we designed and constructed the new school here in Lake Bluff, and then the last 2 years as a member of the board. And believe it or not, I really miss being involved in what's going on in Lake Bluff, and I look forward, hopefully, to doing that again with as a village trustee. Perfect.
I timed mine out.
Thank you. Now we go into a question and answer period. Each candidate has 1 minute to answer the questions, and we'll be rotating, so it varies as to who will be asked the first question. If you have a question, raise your hand, and a member of the league will come and give you a card, and you write out your question, and then raise your hand again, and we'll collect the cards. They come from that table up here to me, and then I will pose the questions to the candidates. So, Mr. Meyer, the first question is, right out of the box, what advantages and disadvantages do you see in having a Target store in Lake Bluff?
Okay, I figured that would be the first question, as a matter of fact. Obviously, the advantages are our building of our tax base. In order to maintain the level of services that we need to have the high quality that this community has had and expects to continue to have, we have to foster economic development. We have to improve our tax base, and that is one of the great advantages of this development. What I think we all need to understand is that there will be a process with a lot of very intelligent people taking a look at this. It's going to go through the PCZBA. People will be able to announce and participate and share their concerns. Obviously, there's concerns about traffic, concerns about congestion. Let everybody be part of the process to voice those. And with everybody looking at it, I think we'll be presented with some pretty good ideas that I hope are going to reach a good way of approaching this and having a great benefit for the village.
Mr. Josephitis, the same question.
Yes, advantages. Obviously, there's a great financial gain to be had here by having the Target in the village. There's also the possibility of having the Target as really a major anchor for the area. There will be outlets associated with this also, so there'll be other new businesses in that area. With having a Target as an anchor in Lake Bluff, this is going to draw other people into the village. And if we can market this right, we will be able to get those people into the downtown area also, and hopefully they'll be able to support the smaller businesses. Disadvantages, and we hear it loud and clear, is make sure that you control the traffic and it's not too overwhelming for Route 176. We're looking at the traffic study. We've sent it back for more information, and we really haven't received it yet. So we're still in the process of doing this. Finally, I'd like to say, we don't have enough time here. Could I finish my sentence? I think it's important to note that Target is looking at 30 properties to develop in the next year throughout the whole United States, and they're only going to do 20. So it's not a shoo-in yet. Thank you.
Mr. Grenier.
Yeah, Target, you know, I have to admit, my first reaction was, really? But as I study the project and watch what they've submitted, I'm warming up to the idea. I think, agreeing with what everybody said, it really depends on the deal that we cut. I mean, Lake Bluff has limited space, so if we're going to develop a retail entity, that's where it's going to have to be, and then expand down into that business development area. So all the traffic considerations, those are going to happen eventually. But it really, my big concern is what kind of a deal we get. Target's going to want tax breaks in the beginning. They're going to have leverage because they'll be able to go maybe down 176 toward 94 and potentially do the same thing that happened to Lake Forest with Costco. I just want to make sure that whatever deal we cut doesn't cut the funding in the short or medium term, because if we put a Dominic's out of business, we lose their revenue and it goes to Target and we're only getting a portion of that tax revenue. We could lose, at least initially. We want to avoid that.
Thank you. The next question is to Mr. Josephitis first. What is the appropriate relationship between the board and the village administration?
Short answer, eyes on, hands off. That's what is a good rule for any board overseeing an administration. We have a great staff that the taxpayers pay for. Drew Irvin's a great administrator. We have wonderful finance people. The staff is wonderful. We oversee them. We do not tell them what to do on a daily basis. Again, real simple, eyes on, hands off.
Yeah, I would agree with that from my experience on the school board. It's really the same sort of deal. Our job is to think long-term and maybe perhaps more importantly to represent the community, to listen to the residents in the community and get an understanding of what people are thinking and then convey that to the administration and be thinking about 5 years, 10 years, 20 years out. I certainly see our role in assessing performance and evaluating how people are doing, helping motivate, helping keep people informed, and also listening to their views. But absolutely, very, very importantly, hands off the daily, weekly, monthly activities of the administration.
Mr. Meyer.
Couldn't agree more with everything that's been said. We have some consummate professionals. They do their job very well. We're very lucky to have them. I think we can provide guidance, vision for the future, but they do such a great day-to-day job, you know, eyes on, hands off. That's a great approach.
Thank you. Mr. Grenier, this question starts for you, with you. What is the biggest issue facing the village today?
I think the biggest, really thinking longer term, is what we're going to do to develop further our tax base and leverage the assets that we still have. To do that, I think there obviously are some projects still left to do in terms of developing housing. There are a few places left, obviously Stonebridge and a few others, that we need to, I think, over the long term, expand those to broaden the property tax base. Obviously, developing our commercial and in particular retail to improve the property taxes. We've only got one area to do, and that's the area we're talking about with Target and that area south. And that's our only chance of spreading the tax base out as far as we can, because we're a small village, and it's expensive, and property taxes are high, and these are really the only choices we have left.
Mr. Meyer?
Yes, I couldn't agree more with everything Eric has said, and the priorities as I see them, I put them in a couple of categories. One is with volunteerism. We have to always strive to promote that. I mean, you see the interested people who are serving today on the village board and in all the other capacities, the other committees, the other things like the fire department. That is so important to us and to our future. Village finances, continued responsible financial stewardship, and as Eric just said, you know, fostering the economic development. If we're going to maintain the level of services, the excellence of service, the professionalism that we all enjoy, we need to be thinking long-term. We need to be fostering this economic growth in a way so the village can flourish consistent with its character.
Mr. Josephitis?
Well, I agree with everything that's been said. You know, we did do a strategic plan, and we're implementing it and well on our way. The biggest thing that all the community members really said is do whatever you can to lower our property tax bills if you can. Well, we're not going to promise to lower your bills, but we need to work to generate revenue and do whatever we can to control that cost. You know, obviously the real estate developments will help, the development of the economic business base will help. We've also started a branding program which is going to help, and we're in the process of that. The branding program is going to help our communities, our business community grow by putting Lake Bluff on the map, but it's also going to help our homeowners and the real estate values because it's going to draw people to look at Lake Bluff who may not be if they want to live here in the future. So it's going to help our real estate market too.
Thank you. The next question goes first to Mr. Meyer. What is the status of the Harrison House property?
The status there is that we have received a new and revised proposal. It is going through the process very similar to, you know, I think what we've said about the target. It's going to be presented. It's going to be vetted by a lot of the very smart people who are part of the process, the PCZBA, the Historical Preservation Commission, village staff. And as it goes through that process, you know, I would encourage everybody who's a citizen in Lake Bluff to offer their input so we can arrive at an approach to this situation that's going to be best for everybody, that's going to balance everybody's concerns, and that will result in a good result, a good development with the situation.
Mr. Josephitis?
Yes, they are revising their plan. They did come before the PCZBA and the village board, offering 109 units where it's been approved for 85 through the PRD. You know, the developer asked the board to say, you know, give us feedback on that. I said, you know, 109 up from 85, which was a lot of housing units, is a bit much. I told them that the cottages that they're proposing are a bit too close together. Hopefully they can reduce that number. And I have to say that this developer is a good developer. He's cleaning up the front 14 acres right away. He's doing it in the right manner. He's cleaning up the property before they build. And they are adjusting their plan to meet the market. They will have 3 different types of housing. The high end, the mid end are okay. I'm just a little concerned about the price point of the cottages, that they are competing with the neighborhoods just adjacent to it.
Mr. Grenier?
We're going to, Harrison will be developed. Again, it's one of the last remaining places we have to develop. And in general, what I've seen, I think I'm inclined to think that I'll eventually support that. My biggest concerns about it, first of all, there's a lot of really great stuff involved. I like the preservation of the Harrison House and the creation of that community. You know, there are traffic studies to be done. There are various things to be done that'll make that, I think, project overall work. My biggest concern, and the thing that we need to do to work together as a community, is is the impact on the folks in the West Terrace. It's probably the biggest issue. I'm hoping we can work out a plan that enables us to minimize the impact on that. Long term, it's going to be developed, and West Terrace is going to be affected by it, but it's to minimize that as much as possible in the final plan.
Thank you. Mr. Josephitis, the next question starts with you. Do you anticipate any annexation of currently unincorporated land by the village? What would be your consideration if such a situation arises?
There may be very small selective annexation of commercial property along 176, maybe slices of private property, but there'll be no broad annexation of that area. I think it's come up for referendum 3 times and it's failed each time. Financially, it's just not a good idea for the village to do it. And there's really been no demand even to approach annexation for that. So to answer the question, limited annexation of just the commercial properties. They've actually been approached by us and there is really no interest in doing it. So I don't see that it's going to happen.
Mr. Grenier.
Yeah, I don't have, having not been on the board, I don't have any experience with what's currently going on. What I believe is that if we're going to look at annexing areas, we want to look at it from financial impact on the community. The other thing is trying to find ways to make it a little bit more cohesive on the west side, because the village, we have the south side of the road, but we don't have the north side. And you know, maybe something like that would be of interest, but of course we don't control that. So that, I think it will be limited as well.
Mr. Meyer.
Annexation requires careful consideration based on the best interest of the village and its citizens. Commercial annexation is probably the thing that we would be receptive to, if anything. Mm-hmm. We do have a responsibility in that respect to take advantage of any opportunities that would enhance our village, enhance its tax base without compromising our character. If we are facing this, I think any means by which we can obtain the input of the voters is a good thing. And in that regard, we'd like to hear from you whenever anything like that may come up. And I would always like to be in a position where if there is an opportunity, we have the capability to take advantage of it and not let a competing municipality enhance its tax base.
Thank you. Mr. Grenier, what would you do on the board to ensure that you are aware of and addressing the issues that exist for village residents west of Green Bay, including the sanctuary?
Well, one thing that I did learn being on the school board, when projects came up, there were a lot of people who came forward with opinions, and it was great to hear the ones that agreed with me, and not so great to hear the ones that didn't. But I found over time that in many ways I learned more and got more benefit, and the projects got more benefit when we listened to the folks who were critical of us. And some of those folks are in this room today, and I have great appreciation for what they contributed, not only when we were trying to sell the project, but once we did, getting involved. So I would think any activity that would be of interest to and involve the west side of Lake Bluff, that those folks will be available with ideas and thoughts, and our job is to listen to them. Not only give them a venue to speak, but to actually listen to what they're saying, because my experience is we learn a lot and the projects are better because of it.
Mr. Meyer.
I think I heard a lot from Eric here about responsiveness to the voters, and that's a fundamental for me, fundamental principle for me. You know, in terms of enhancing the situation, enhancing life for people who are west of Green Bay, let's hear from them. Let's hear from them as to what it is that they're looking for. They're part of our community. Let's include them. Let's listen to them. Let's be responsive.
Mr. Josephitis.
Well, I used to live west of Green Bay, and we're fortunate enough to know a lot of people that live over there. Actually, we were just at a rather large party to one of the homeowners who is adjacent kind of to the Jawa plant there, and they would overlook the field where senior housing may go, eventually, or where the target would be. And you got to get out and talk to the people. That's what we did. And a lot of people seem to be warming to the fact that, yeah, that may be a good project for that site. Same thing, you know, East Side, we represent them. You go to the beach and you talk to people. It's important to be out and active in the community and talk to people. And what I do is, if there are issues, I tell the folks to come to the meetings and present their case to the different review boards and ultimately the village board, because we do listen to you.
Thank you. Mr. Meyer, how about merging with Lake Forest?
I have to answer that? Becoming one community with Lake Forest? Gosh, I have never thought of that, but I think you can see from my immediate silence at first that it's certainly not on my agenda. So they say keep your questions, your answer's simple, so I'll say no.
Mr. Josephitis.
Well, I don't think, obviously, we should be absorbed into Lake Forest, but there are opportunities for us to work with them. We attended a meeting in Highland Park regarding the fire department and EMS coordination, and that would be between Highland Park, Lake Forest, Highwood, and Lake Bluff. You know, we may save some money by combining our dispatch services. There's opportunities to work with Lake Forest and other communities, but to be absorbed into Lake Forest, no.
Mr. Grenier?
Yeah, I reflect what both of my friends have said here. We had this issue, sorry I keep bringing the school up, but it's all that it's where my experience is. We had this issue in discussions with, you know, do we merge the school districts? Do we become one? And there's a lot of logic behind that. But there was also a very strong sense in Lake Bluff that we didn't want to lose control. We wanted to still maintain our uniqueness and have some influence on how things are going separately. And I think the future for that, for us, is exactly what these guys have said, is we're separate entities, but we can function together wherever possible. So you get the advantage of the control, but you share resources, you share people, you share contracts. I was very big on participating on tri-board activity where the 3 school districts got together, and sometimes the park district and the village, and that's the kind of stuff we did well inside Lake Bluff and would want to do with Lake Forest.
Thank you. Mr. Josephitis, how could changes in planning and zoning enhance the revenue of the village?
Well, obviously, if you change zoning to increase density, as in the Stonebridge project, you're going to increase revenues. There'll be more building permits, more impact fees. Same with commercial development. This is something to be treaded on very seriously if we're going to be doing any of that. You know, people buy their houses with certain zoning in place, and you know, we need to respect that. And if we're going to be changing zoning, we need to make sure it makes sense for the village, and it also has positive impact on the neighboring community and neighbors.
Mr. Grenier?
I think our biggest zoning opportunities might be in terms of what we do with our commercial zoning on the west side and turning that potentially into retail, which is exactly what's going on with the target. And I think that really depends on where we think will enhance the revenue and the reputation of the village. I don't see a lot of zoning going on in most of the village. Again, we've got Stonebridge left, maybe a few other spots, but I think we would want to respond to what's going on in the market, both in terms of housing, but I think our bigger opportunity is really going to be on the commercial versus retail and what we do with that west side, because that to me is our largest opportunity.
Mr. Meyer?
I think the guiding principle in zoning is that we have a responsibility to be fair, to be responsive, to look for opportunities where we can promote economic growth consistent with the character of the village. You know, to echo what my friends here have said, though, I think we do have some things we could do to improve the situation with the commercial zoning that's in the West. I know we've encountered some situations in the past, and I'm not a technical zoning expert or zoning lawyer or anything like that, but situations where the zoning as it existed was not responsive to as responsive as it could have been to very responsible, good commercial uses out there. So I know we have some work to do in that regard, and in that way I agree certainly with my colleagues here. Look at that issue so that we can be responsive to economic growth.
Thank you. Mr. Grenier, has the recycling program proved to be successful?
I can give you an answer from a resident perspective. I use the recycling center all the time. I use it for getting material for the garden and for bringing things, but I don't know anything about the overall performance of that. That's something I would have to learn as a member of the board.
I'll have to confess also, I don't know anything about the statistics, the numbers, or anything else of that nature about the recycling. What I do have is the perspective of being a resident and also the perspective of going on a Boy Scout trip with my son to the place where all of our recycling eventually ends up. I will tell you the system works well from my point of view as a resident. If you've taken a tour, or if you haven't taken a tour of that facility that is up in the Grays Lake area, I'd encourage you to do so. It is truly impressive as to how every little bit gets separated and reused. So at least in that regard, it sure looks that if we're feeding as we are, into that system using that contractor, it certainly appears to me that a good job is being done.
Mr. Josephitis?
Well, I think it's been extremely successful. One of my first votes was to vote for privatizing the refuse and recycling program, and we've done that. They do a wonderful job. We were able to transfer, I believe, 12 public employees to a private group who works to collect the refuse now, so they're off of the public role, if you will. I think we save a couple $100,000 to $300,000 a year by privatizing that program. So I would say yes, it's been very successful.
Thank you, gentlemen. We are running out of time for questions, so we will now proceed to your closing statements, and we will begin with Mr. Grenier, then Mr. Josephitis, and then Mr. Meyer.
Just in closing, philosophically, what I think I learned being in public service for those first 8 years is the benefits that I got from listening to folks in the community and in engaging folks in the community, both, again, who agreed or maybe disagreed with me or with us, the group that I was with. We have real opportunities to engage each other, talking about organizationally, in Lake Bluff and Lake Forest and other surrounding communities. We have opportunities to maintain separation and control of our village, but also taking advantage of the resources that are in these other communities and combine those resources to reduce our costs and improve performance. As an example, I think what I learned most from is when we did the school project and we spent 2 years or a year and a half developing the design of that project, we were ready to begin to construct. And we had to go before the village and the zoning board, and we had a lot of legal opinions telling us we didn't have to do that we had jurisdiction and could move forward. The risks were the village gets involved, we won't open the building on time. And we made the decision to engage the village and engage the zoning board and get them involved, and we ended up with a better project. And we didn't insist on our jurisdiction, and we listened. And I learned a lot from that particular event because not only did we have a better project, but the relationships between us were great after that was over.
Thank you. Mr. Josephitis.
Yes, first of all, I'd like to thank the League for hosting this event. I think it's very helpful and hopefully a lot of people will watch. Over the next 4 years, I want to continue to work to do whatever we can to control our property tax bills. I'd like to see the West Business Corridor rezoned so we can generate more sales tax revenue from that area. We'd like to see the Shepherd property redeveloped into something. I'd like to see the branding initiative completed. help our business community, and also help market Lake Bluff so that our property values can be kept as high as possible. Long term, I'd like to keep the village in good financial condition. We have a AAA bond rating right now. Keep pushing forward on the Route 176-41 interchange. We're completing phase 1 of that program now, and the next phase is to begin funding, or to get funding, so that's going to take a little arm twisting of the higher ups, if you will. And importantly, I think it's important that we maintain the spirit of volunteerism in the community. It's been a pleasure working with everybody on the board over the last 6 years. We've got wonderful people, and I'm excited to do it for another 4 years and ask for your vote on April 9th. Thank you.
Mr. Meyer.
Thank you to everybody who made this event possible today, and thank you to everyone who participated. We all benefit when the citizens share all of their ideas and all of their concerns. For my closing, I'm going to reiterate the points that I think that are really, really important for this village. The first of them is volunteerism. We must always work to support, foster, and grow the strong tradition of volunteerism that we have in the village. It is really unique. We all benefit from it, and we should never take it for granted. With village finances, continued responsible stewardship of village finances, alleviation of the tax burden, that's a critical job for every one of us who's involved with this. To keep that tax burden under control, we have to foster good, sensible, smart economic growth, create an environment where businesses can flourish, and do this all consistent with our village's character. If we do a good job with all of these things, if we listen to all of you, we'll achieve another goal, which is to continue this highest level of professionalism and excellence in the provision of village services. It's something we deliver to all the residents of the village, to all of ourselves, and we have to continue it. These are not easy tasks. We must always deliver them and consider them with fairness, and do it in an environment of respect and responsiveness to all of you. With all that, I ask for your vote, and thank you very much.
Thank you to all of the candidates, and once again, there are 4 candidates for 3 openings on the village board, and the election is April 9th. Thank you, and we'll take a 5-minute break, and then we will have the District 65 candidates. Thank you very much. Good luck. Good afternoon, and I want to thank you and welcome you on behalf of the League of Women Voters and AAUW for attending this afternoon, and thank you to all of our candidates for coming. We have all 7 candidates for the school district, and there are 4 openings, so you have a lot of choice here. We will begin with opening statements. Each candidate gets a minute and a half for an opening statement, and then a minute and a half for a closing statement at the end. In between times, we will be asking questions that are submitted by you, the audience. If you wish to ask a question, raise your hand, and someone from the league will come and give you a card and a pen to write the question, and then raise your hand again, and they will come and collect the card from you. And we will be alternating who answers the question first. So I think we can get started with Ms. Letchinger.
Well, thank you. Good afternoon. Some of you may know me as a soon-to-be retired village president, but in my other life, I am a college professor. I teach accounting and finance. Additionally, I serve as an assistant dean for approximately 500 students. I have both budget and curriculum responsibilities, and I believe that this dual background is relevant to my candidacy as a school board member. I've served more than 13 years on the village board, and I understand that first and foremost, the responsibility of a board is to the entire community. During my tenure as village president, I had the opportunity to guide the village under very difficult economic circumstances. I was able to reduce the budget while maintaining a high level of municipal services. In 2010, in the midst of a severe recession, the village received a AAA bond rating. And I must confess that as a finance geek, that was one of my secret ambitions. Because I serve on a board and I also work for a board, I appreciate the unique role and the dynamics between boards and administrative staff. An effective partnership between the two is essential to the success of an organization. As a teacher and also an administrator, I realize that increasing financial resources does not always guarantee quality education. I believe in academic rigor and culture of accountability for all stakeholders, teachers, administrators, students, parents, board members, and the community at large. Thank you.
Mr. Hegg.
Thank you. My name is Richard Hegg. I've been a member of both the Lake Forest and Lake Bluff communities since moving here at the age of 25. I grew up in Galesburg, Illinois, in a family where both of my parents were very distinguished high school teachers. Following my graduation from Knox College, I worked in sales and sales management with ITT, and for the past 30 years I've been an owner of Hamlet & Smith, which is a manufacturer's rep firm. I've had children in the public schools in Lake Forest and Lake Bluff, where they've had wonderful educations, wonderful experiences, which have propelled them to very successful college careers and productive lives. And I continue to have a very strong invested interest in District 65, as I have two granddaughters who someday will be attending Lake Bluff schools. Isabella Daler is 4 years old, and Penelope Daler just arrived last Monday, so she's 6 days old. And I can assure you that I'm as interested in providing them with a superior education as any parent in the district. I believe we must be in the forefront of education if we intend to continue to be what I fervently believe is the premier community on the North Shore, and my interest is in serving to bring more transparency to actions of the board and greater communication to the citizens.
Thank you. Mr. Marozsan?
That's pretty good. Hi, my name is John Marozsan. My wife Ann and I have lived in Lake Bluff since 1996. We have 3 grown boys and 2 grandchildren, the oldest of which will be entering kindergarten this year. I earned an undergraduate degree from Trenton State College in science education and moved, my first job was as a middle school science teacher. And during the process of teaching school, I was awarded a National Science Foundation grant to attend Harvard University, where I received a Master's of Arts in Teaching. And while at Harvard, I became involved in curricular development and textbooks, working with school systems and developers to implement programs. That led me to a long career in publishing, 30-year career in publishing, and ended up being CEO and president of a company for the final 16 of those years. I currently serve on the Lake Bluff Library Board and became interested in the school board last year, requested some information, saw that it cost roughly $20,000 a year to educate one student, so I began to dig a little further, attended a few school board meetings, asked some questions, and decided at that point that if I really wanted to make a difference, bring my skill sets to the table, I should get more involved, and that's why I'm here today. Thank you.
Ms. Amaral?
Hi, I'm Kate Amaral. Thank you to Melanie Rummel and the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum. What do you need to know about me? I was I was raised in Denver, Colorado, in a home that instilled in me a value of public education. I'm trained as a scientist with a degree in chemistry, and prior to moving to Lake Bluff, I had a successful career as a molecular and cellular biologist. When we did move to the area, we deliberately chose to live in Lake Bluff for the school district and for the charm of the village. My children have been in District 65 since they were kindergartners. It's hard to believe that they are now 6th graders. I have twin boys at the middle school. I've dedicated much of my time over the last 7 years to the district. Through my work on the PTO, I've helped raise over $100,000 for the district. For the last 3 years, I've served as Lake Bluff PTO president, overseeing the entire organization, providing curricular enrichment, and creating new innovative programs like our recent Family Science Nights. I'm also part of the Community Wellness Task Force, which was formed in response to the youth suicides in our area last spring. This task force is comprised of 14 diverse groups within the communities of Lake Bluff, Lake Forest, and Knollwood. Now that we finally have a true educational leader at the helm of the district, I am determined to do whatever I can to ensure that our schools continue on this positive trajectory, but in a fiscally responsible manner. As an analytical problem solver and with a broad knowledge base of our district and community, I believe that I am a strong candidate for school board and would be honored to continue to serve our community in this role. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Gottshall.
Good afternoon, and thank you all for being here. It is really a privilege to be in a room with so many civic-minded people and to be at the table with all of my colleagues here, an illustrious group. Who am I? I am a working mom. I am the mother of 2 children who are in the Lake Bluff schools. I've got one at the elementary school in 4th grade and one at the middle school in 7th grade. I am also a practicing attorney, so I work with a law firm downtown where I practice employment law on behalf of management, counseling, and litigation. When people ask me why I work, I say it's because at home nobody wants to hear a word I have to say, and I go to work and they pay me to tell them what to do, so it's a great counterweight to my 2 different lives. You know, why am I sitting here? There are many reasons. One of the other things I do in my professional life is I am general counsel and an ex officio board member of Youth Build, which is an organization in North Chicago dedicated to helping people get their education. And what I find is with the school board is the confluence of 2 great passions of mine. It is the belief in education and the role that public education can play, as well as a belief that we need to be very mindful of what we do with our governmental authority and the purse strings that the school board does hold. So what I'm looking to do is to bring caliber of education at a cost that makes this an attractive place to live. Thank you.
Ms. Brady.
Mrs. Rummel, fellow candidates, citizens of District 65, thanks to all of you for being here today. In particular, thank you to the League of Women Voters who, through their commitment to the democratic process and thorough public discourse, have provided us this opportunity to discuss our credentials. I'm grateful to you, the residents, who have taken the time today to come here and listen to us. I'm Mary Jane Brady. I've been a part of our district since 1995. I've lived in several places in our community, including Knollwood and North Terrace. My husband Frank and I have 2 children who are educated in the Lake Bluff schools. Eileen is currently an 8th grader and Emmett a 7th grader. I've been a member of the District 65 school board for 5 years. I'm proud to have been a member of a board that husbanded resources to create a rainy day fund. While state government cannot pay its bills and the federal government has just gone over the fiscal cliff, we in District 65 fully and timely meet our financial obligations. Our efforts have resulted in District 65 receiving the highest financial recognition from the Illinois State Board of Education. I'm proud to have served on a board that has an agreement, that restructured an agreement with our educators without losing a single minute of classroom instruction time. I'm proud to have been on a board which in December voted to do something unheard of in governance. We reduced taxes. I'm proud to have been a member of a board that a year and a half ago replaced an excellent interim superintendent, Dr. Ben Martindale, with an incredible new superintendent, Jean Sophie. Her expertise, experience, and energy have already made a substantial contribution to our schools, and they will only get better.
Mr. Waggoner.
Good afternoon. Eric Waggoner, current member of the District 65 Board of Education, parent of 2 students currently in the district and a preschooler on the way. A big thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting this event, to Melanie Rummel for moderating, and for the citizens here today who are participating in this discussion. Elections are about values. On Election Day and in early voting, voters will have a clear values choice among school board candidates as they go to the polls. Should education be viewed primarily through the lens of taxation or as the firm bedrock of a community? Smart Choices 65 holds to the latter view, and our words and deeds are proof of our commitment to this school district and to the community. As experienced, successful educational leaders on the PTO and the school board, Kate Amaral, MJ Brady, and I have championed academic excellence in our years of service to the district. MJ and I, as board members, have also worked hard to balance this goal of academic achievement with fiscal discipline by overseeing a well-managed operation, gradually building the district's reserves in the efforts to meet the financial challenges that our district faces in the future, and last year voting for taxpayer relief in light of our district's comfortable financial position. District 65 is an ideal destination community, and our community holds its property value through the high caliber of our schools. Kate, MJ, and I promise to continue our track record of success foster academic excellence balanced with fiscal discipline, and serve our entire community with these values in mind. Thank you.
Thank you. We now will begin the question period with Ms. Letchinger. What is your philosophy on teacher contract negotiation? What is the role of the board versus the administration in that process?
I'm sure that Julie can address this a lot better than me as a labor attorney. I can tell you that my experience with the village is that we do not personally negotiate contracts with teachers. I mean, with a village employee, we actually have an attorney that does that. Staff works at crunching up numbers. We are kept abreast of the progress of the negotiation. We are asked to comment and to set up the parameters of negotiation. And I think that's probably a good way of doing it.
Thank you. Mr. Hegg?
Well, I think the most important thing is to be prepared when you're going into these negotiations. You're going to be facing professionals whose own self-interest is to squeeze as much money as they possibly can out of your pocket. These people are professionals. They're people who lead the unions, are interested, have that sole responsibility, and you have to be very, very prepared to take on these people.
Well, I've never negotiated a teacher's contract before. I've certainly negotiated hundreds of other types of contracts, but as I understand it, the board is legally required to approve all employment contracts. However, the board delegates authority to the superintendent to select and evaluate district staff within the standards that are established in written board policy. So that's the position I would take in that case.
Ms. Amaral?
Excuse me. I agree on that front. I think you take the lead from the superintendent, but the board definitely has to approve the negotiations and the contracts. I look forward to learning more about that.
Ms. Gottshall?
This one, thank you. I would echo the comments made by John. I think that this gets to the greater issue of what's the board's role in general, and I think it's very important to be clear that the board doesn't run the school. The board doesn't belong in the school micromanaging all of the different decisions. The board sets the policy, the board sets the tone, the board, of course, controls and approves the budget. Those same principles would carry through to the contract negotiations. I would expect that we would hire professionals who would handle those negotiations and that we would set the broader policy goals, but that ultimately we would be supporting the superintendent in the primary negotiating role.
Brady?
I also agree that the superintendent plays an important role in the negotiation of contract, but the board has to be very involved throughout the process, needs to be updated, needs to be clear on what policies and what it is they intend to get from that contract. So the board needs to be involved all throughout the contract, even though the superintendent may be functioning as the CEO, hired by the board in that process, but the board is very involved in negotiating a teacher contract.
Mr. Waggoner?
Thank you. To echo MJ's comments, the board plays a very critical role in the negotiations of a teacher's contract. The most important thing in my mind that a board does in the context of these negotiations is to set the tone from a policy standpoint, but also from the standpoint of ensuring that the teachers understand that it's not an us versus them struggle that has to go on in the context of negotiations. We all have to find a way to make it work for the district and for the students ultimately.
Thank you. Mr. Hegg, the next question goes to you first. How do you think the district should plan for facilities maintenance and capital improvements? Through saving up for them or through financing by bond issues?
It's a very long question, and it requires gathering a lot of data. To try to shoot from the hip and answer that would be a bit ridiculous. What you have to do is take a long-term view of what your expenses are going to be on it, and then determine the best way to balance that out over the years, depending on what it is you're trying to trying to build or save up for.
Thank you. Mr. Marozsan.
Yeah, I think what's required here in any future expenditure is a comprehensive plan. I mean, I've spent 30 years in business, and every year we updated our strategic plans to not only look at capital requirements, but also other types of expenditures. So regardless of where the sourcing comes from, I think the planning is the most critical item. So a very comprehensive facilities plan, and to go even further than that, a vision plan for strategic purposes for education is important, a facilities plan is important. We need in our case, a particular fund balance policy plan. We have a fairly extensive fund balance. No question we need a fund balance. The real question is, what's the amount that we should be setting for our target? So overall, I think the most important message I have is planning.
Ms. Amaral.
Indeed, first you need to start with a strategic plan, and currently the district is going through that process. From the strategic plan, from there you can see what facilities will be needed or improved over time. You can budget for those, and thankfully our school district now has been fiscally responsible and has funds to fulfill whatever comes out of the strategic plan. But that's the first step, to look long-term with planning and then budget for those costs.
Ms. Gottshall?
Yes. Again, to echo the comments previously made, obviously planning is very, very important. I have served on the library board for the past 4 years. We managed a renovation that didn't increase taxes and went very well. That was an example of having saved the money and then moving forward with the renovation. That works very well. Now, obviously, we have a new school. You need to issue bonds sometimes. I think we need to be very, very careful with how that's done, make sure we get the right expertise so that we are mindful of the bond debt that we have and how we service it. So I think that you need to use both of those tools, but you also need to do it in a very cognizant way with forethought.
Mr. Waggoner.
Brady.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm terribly sorry. You were behind her. I couldn't see. Sorry.
District 65 has always had a strategic plan. The difference now is that the current board has commissioned a professional, comprehensive strategic plan guided by professionals. We are about to get that information this coming month. There will be opportunities for us to look at facility planning. As for the question that was asked, whether you use bonds or save up the money, it's going to depend, and probably should be a combination of both, depending on what facility it is that you're updating or upgrading or perhaps creating. So I would say a combination probably of bonds and saving up. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Waggoner.
That's absolutely right. The nature of the improvements are going to dictate whether a savings plan or a bond issuance is the way to go with a particular type of facility improvement. District 65, as MJ just alluded, is in the midst of the first ever truly professional comprehensive plan that's going to chart a course in the future for capital facilities and a lot of other things that go into running a district and guiding the district for the future. Capital facilities is one of those things that plays a part in the in educating children, because these are the facilities that the children are going to be in. And so it's very important that as part of any comprehensive effort, we're making sure that our buildings are updated and continue to function the way they're purposed.
Ms. Letchinger.
I'm a great advocate of strategic planning. I also believe that strategic planning should be an effort that is community-wise. I'm very leery of professional designing a strategic plan on behalf of the school, or for that matter, for the village. This being said, once you have a strategic plan, you have to realize that you have some competing opportunities. And most of the projects that will come in front of the school board are essentially good projects. The only way you can make a decision as to whether to do the project or not do the project is on a basis of several criteria. These criteria are established by the strategic plan. The second thing is that whether you bond or whether you do it from reserve is really a function of the long-term financial plan, which is really guided by the strategic plan and also by the finance committee. And I understand that at present there's no finance committee.
Thank you. Mr. Marozsan, this question will go to you first. How do you plan to deal with the increase in debt incurred from the new school that will happen in the next 4 years?
That's a very good question. For those of you that aren't aware, the debt payment is roughly $1.1 million a year. In a few years, it goes up to 2.2, as well as the interest rate increase. And a few years after that, it's going to go up to over $3 million a year with a further interest rate increase. I'm by no means a bond expert, but I know all of us can gather experts to evaluate, I think, the best approach to take, because there's no question that that's an upcoming dilemma. We need to evaluate and analyze the existing bond situation to determine whether there are alternatives to either refinancing or abating the bonds in some fashion to make certain that that future debt doesn't come back to haunt us.
Thank you. Ms. Amaral.
Thank you. Excuse me. Not to get into too many details, and again, I look forward to learning more about this, but the bonds in question the call date isn't even until 2018, so there's really nothing that can be done about those bonds now, except from the strategic plan, determine what the goals are for the district, and then come up with some creative solutions as to how to begin to pay down that debt. Again, you need to know what the goals are and the needs of the district over the next 10 years, and then really look at how you could possibly pay down that debt. Again, we can't call these bonds till 2018.
Ms. Gottshall?
Right, and I think to play off of Kate's comments, that's the problem that we've got, is we've got these bonds, it's going to become due. There's nothing we can do about it now, yet we have this looming impending debt, and as far as I know, no plan to deal with it. This is a real issue. And one that we would have to, I certainly don't have any answers, but one that we as a board would have to explore and try to understand the impact that will have on future taxes and what we can do to mitigate that. So that is certainly something that I think we need good financial backgrounds on the board to deal with. I personally don't bring that background, but there are others on my slate that most certainly do.
Ms. Brady.
To be clear, the debt is not increasing. The bonds were issued, and we knew from the start, the school district knew from the start what these payments would be. So this is not a surprise to the school district or the school board. I would echo a comment that the strategic plan is part of the planning for this debt service. Some of the bonds are callable in 2018. We have an extremely experienced consultant in PMA and in William Blair, who have been working with us about possibilities for this bond abatement, or perhaps refunding, or perhaps retiring some of this bond debt. So again, it isn't that the board doesn't have a plan or was surprised by the fact that we do still have debt service coming.
Mr. Waggoner.
Carrying debt is a normal function of any local government. The function of running a large organization such as this that incurs debt. That's a fact of life. The Board of Education is responsible for managing that debt appropriately with guidance from experts. As part of our strategic planning process, we will avail ourselves of the financial advice of PMA and William Blair in making sure that out of all the options, be it abatement, defeasance, refunding bonds at varying periods of time, we'll have a very solid financial plan going forward in managing the debt that we have now and the debt we may have in the future.
Ms. Letchinger.
Normally, when you have bonds and you structure your bonds, the way you do it is that when you're going to have a jump in bond payment, you plan it in such a way then that you have prior bonds that are retired. So this is not the case in the case of the school. In the case of school, you are, as John said, going from roughly $1 million to $3 million. Those bonds are not callable until 2018. That is a problem because it's somewhat of a gamble. We're assuming that in 2018, we can refinance the bond at a rate of interest that is more attractive than we can do now. I just did a refinancing of bonds for the water plant, $47 million. We saved actually $750,000 in the process for the taxpayer. Are the interest rate going to be as low in 2018 as they are now? That is the gamble.
Mr. Hegg.
To me, as a citizen of Lake Bluff, this is like the 500-pound gorilla in the room. I was totally unaware that these bonds were back-end loaded, totally unaware of the increased responsibility we've got over future years, and it's going to take some real financial moxie to try to figure out how to flatten this out. I certainly don't have it, but I know that we need to get the experts in and the expertise of other people on the board to figure out the best solution for this.
Thank you. Ms. Amaral, the next question is to you first. What do you consider to be an appropriate level of cash reserve for the district as a percentage of operating expenses? And what is your rationale?
Thank you. I know we have currently a minimum fund balance set at 25% within the district, and that relates to the state's rating of our district's financial stability. Currently, we are at the highest level of that ranking and hope to stay there. Personally, I think a 50% fund balance would be a decent amount to have in our fund balance, with not knowing what's going to happen in Springfield, whether they're going to push the teacher pension plans back on the district. Again, with this strategic plan underway and not knowing what our facility needs and other needs will be for the district, I think 50% fund balance would be a good place to be.
Ms. Gottshall.
Yes, thank you. Certainly this is an issue that's gotten a lot of attention, I think deservedly so, from the concerned citizens that move forward. And while 25% is a good baseline, my understanding is that we have far in excess in that in our fund balance. And that we have sort of always increased the tax levy until just this past year, just as a matter of course. And I think we need a board and a finance committee of that board that's going to challenge these assumptions, take a look at what the fund balance is, what it should be, develop a policy for what the fund balance should be, and then act in comportment with that policy. That hasn't, to the best of my knowledge, been done. With regard to the teacher pension issue, my understanding is that that would have a relatively de minimis effect as they're discussing it now, and so we've more than got, we've got more than enough to compensate for that. But I think this goes to the issue of planning and what needs to be done, and doing that in the future going forward, so everything is aligned: the pension plan, the fund balance, and the tax levy.
Ms. Brady.
I believe that an adequate fund balance would be at least 50% of a yearly, of our yearly budget. However, that would probably need to be supplemented depending on what we were planning for future facilities modifications or updating. It would also be modified, probably increased by some sort of perhaps saving for debt retirement. It will also be impacted perhaps by our pension obligations that may come to us from the state. We have yet to hear what those may be. So there are various things that would impact how much fund balance we would want to keep on hand. And many of those questions will be answered as we finish our strategic plan and move on to our action plans. I do want to correct the idea that there has not been discussion on this board about a maximum fund balance policy. That discussion has been ongoing for several years.
Mr. Waggoner.
In 2003, District 65 was in a financial warning state. The state of Illinois has various categories of accreditation for all of the districts within the state. District 65 had insufficient reserves to pass financial muster with, according to the state standards. We climbed out of the financial warning status over the next several years through a conscious policy of building up our reserves. We're now at a very comfortable position with respect to reserves. My colleagues are correct that the amount of money in reserves is really a function of future planning. Once the district completes its strategic planning process, we'll have a much better sense of the amount of cash on hand we'll need to have, both to address the teacher pension obligation problem, which is looming, but also future capital facilities needs, educational needs, and so forth.
Ms. Letchinger.
A policy on reserves is intended to protect a taxing body from the fluctuation in raising tax revenue. So let's say if you're the village and a large portion of your revenue come from sales tax, and in particular one sector of sales tax, which is the auto sales, we need a protection against the fluctuation in the economy that may lead to the sales tax going down. In the case of a school, your revenue are directly impacted by real estate taxes. So it's important to understand that you protect yourself against the fluctuation, but you don't need that of a large protection. 25–30% is common for school districts. As to replacement fund, capital expenditure, that is part of your operating expenditure and should be set aside. When you need large expenditure of capital, then you have to go to the voters for the bond issue.
Mr. Hegg.
We've got a reserve fund that'd choke a horse right now. We've got a budget, school budget that's somewhere around $15 to $16 million. 25% of that obviously is around $4 million. We've got a reserve somewhere between $12 and $15 million, depending on whether or not you roll into this last return onto our tax bills next time. I think it's ironic that we have taken all this money from the taxpayers prior to having a strategic plan as to what we were going to use the money for.
Mr. Marozsan.
I like a little bit of what Rich said. We have a little bass backwards here. You know, you don't set a policy after you accumulate 15 million bucks. You set the policy initially and determine how you're going to utilize those funds. Because when you have 15 million, or maybe it's 12 now, and we do congratulate the district, by the way, for reducing expenses and listening to the citizens last fall and when we raised our concerns. But when you have a fund balance this large, it becomes a honeypot, and it draws attention and all kinds of attention. So I think that you know, a policy is required, and I'm interested in seeing, because even 50%, we're overfunded by about $9 million. So I'm very interested in seeing how we intend to utilize that incremental $9 million we're currently sitting on.
Thank you. And the next question goes to Ms. Gottshall to begin. We're going to shift a little from finances into teachers and curriculum. How do you think teacher performance should be evaluated?
One thing I've always wondered about is why I, as a parent, am not asked at the end of every school year how the school year went and what I thought of the teacher that my child had. I know there's been, as part of the strategic planning process, finally some outreach to the families to get their feedback, but it's always incredible to me, because I certainly have strong opinions, as do my children, at the end of every year about how things went, what worked, what didn't. I think that a critical component of teacher evaluation and good feedback and communication would be to solicit input more regularly from the parents. You know, certainly test scores are something that people look at quite a bit. Now there's a lot of talk about whether that's effective or not. I think that is one tool that we should certainly use. I understand there's a lot of limitations on what even the best teacher can do to improve test scores. So I realize the limitations of that, but I think that we ought to be taking a 360-degree view of teacher performance and evaluation, and that would certainly include the input from the families as well.
Ms. Brady.
I think it's interesting. I'm sure we all have theories and suggestions about how teachers should be evaluated. The bottom line is the state of Illinois, by and large, decides how we evaluate teachers. And actually, currently, the new teacher evaluation mandate by the state is being rolled into all the districts in the state of Illinois. This means that they are going to prescribe for us how the evaluations will be done, when they will be done, how much time will be spent on those evaluations. So a significant amount of time regarding the teacher evaluation will actually be, like I said, prescribed by the state. That being said, we have just hired a true educational leader who believes that teachers need to be evaluated regularly and in a constructive way. And she has begun that process and is well on her way of working with both of our principals to spend, and herself too, to spend a significant amount of time in the classroom evaluating instruction. Thank you.
Mr. Waggoner.
To echo the sentiment of MJ, Dr. Jean Sophie spends an inordinate amount of time in the classrooms now. She is a true educational leader, having served in multiple posts. She's considered by many of her peers in the industry as a rock star. She connects with our teachers. She advocates for a very close monitoring relationship with the teachers, with administration in each of the buildings. I would also like to point out, though, that in the context of the evaluation process, the state does have an increasingly more complex job set aside for districts in order to conduct evaluations. Those prescriptions are being rolled out now. In the coming years, we will see a much more comprehensive method of engaging teachers in that process. And it's a function of performance.
Ms. Letchinger.
I'm a professor. I'm being evaluated by the administration. I'm also being evaluated by my students. I think that we have to distinguish two things. There is evaluation for the purpose of disciplining, and there's also evaluation for the purpose of principal and administrator knowing what is going on in the schools. I think it's important, as Julie said, that we know what the students as well as the parents think of an instructor, because I think that in addition to observation, you can sit down with the instructor and say, oh, by the way, you know, there is evidence that, you know, parents feel this way or that way about you, or this is a terrific initiative and got a lot of kudos from the parents. I think that is part of the conversation. It may not be an official form of evaluation, but it is something that is relevant, and I think it would go a long way toward establishing trust, because evaluation process doesn't have to be punitive. It has to be to build better results and rigor.
Thank you. Mr. Hegg.
You know, I asked my children what they thought of evaluating teachers. And they thought they could give a pretty clear idea of who their really good educators were. Not necessarily the people that they liked the most, but the people they respected and they thought they learned the most from. So I'm very much a proponent of having some type of a feedback from the students. However, as a board member, I think that it's not our responsibility to tell the administration how to evaluate their teachers. They're the experts. So I go with the administration and their principals for them to figure that one out.
Mr. Marozsan.
This is one of the great dilemmas in American education today. It was around when I was teaching. I have particularly strong views about it as a former teacher. It was part of my graduate program. There's no question that great teachers end up having great students, result in great students. But the real question is, how do you determine what's a great teacher? There are different modes of evaluating teachers, and I do understand the state of Illinois is implementing a new process this year, which I'm very interested in understanding more about. It's a difficult challenge. But there's no question it has to be approached.
Amaral.
Thank you. As MJ said already, the state decides how our teachers are evaluated. A big challenge for our district upcoming is to now take on and implement this new evaluation form. Excuse me. It's going to require a lot of classroom evaluations, and their performance results are tied to the students' test scores. The challenge for our district is going to be having enough administrators that can adequately evaluate our teachers on their performance. I think that this is going to be great for educational instruction, but it's going to be a huge challenge to a district, particularly a small district like ours.
Ms. Brady, this next question is for you. What are the plans to improve the math and science programs in the Lake Bluff schools?
Our math and science programs are quite strong in the Lake Bluff schools. The last several years, we have used Joanne Trahanis as a consultant for our curriculum, and we are very pleased with the scores that we see for our kids when they take the nationally standardized MAP scores. We're also pleased with their performance on our state test. So again, we have, for the first time in a long time, perhaps ever, have a curriculum review cycle, which means that every several years our curriculum will be reviewed in light of student achievement, student success at the high school, student success in college. So we will have a feedback loop that will give us better information about our curriculum.
Mr. Waggoner.
One of the most important functions of a Board of Education is to identify trends, to set in place policies that administration is going to carry out, and to monitor those, the performance in meeting those goals over time. Our math and science program is very strong in the Lake Bluff schools. We do have, as MJ said, for the first time, a curriculum review cycle, which creates that very feedback loop that is so critical in the board doing its job in monitoring the effective carrying out of curricular goals. And so we're excited that as we move forward with the work that's already been done by Joanne Trahanis and all of the staff, that we'll continue to find ways to improve not just the math and science curriculum, but all the curriculum of the district.
Ms. Letchinger.
I had a conversation with superintendent of the school, and that was one of the questions that we had. And if you track the ranking of the school over the years, it fluctuates a great deal. She told us that they were putting in place a schedule whereby the math instructor would receive the same amount of time as the language art. And I think that is really important. I was told, and I'm not sure about this, but I was told that our students are unprepared, somewhat unprepared compared to Lake Forest students when they get to the high school.
Mr. Hegg.
You know, you can run through statistics and kind of make of them what you want to. I think the important thing is to get on the same page with Lake Forest schools on your curriculum, as well as what the plans are to prepare the kids for the high school. Unless we're sharing information with them, there's always going to be discussion as to whether we're up to snuff on our math and science going into the high school, or if they're ahead of us or we're ahead of them, whatever, but we certainly need to get on the same page.
Mr. Marozsan?
I'm a strong proponent of teaching math and science in schools, obviously, and I'm a product of that, teaching myself. There's no question from the statistics that I've seen that we don't come up to the scores that are exhibited by the 7th and 8th grade students, especially in Lake Forest. In fact, we've dropped off over the last 3 years, if you believe those statistics. The incumbents obviously have a better touch with what's going on day to day in the school system today. I haven't been there and don't know what's going on, but I do advocate very strongly that we emphasize our math and science programs.
Ms. Amaral.
Being a scientist, I'm obviously very passionate about our science curriculum and our math curriculum. As it was already mentioned, one of, I think, the best things that's happened in our district over the last few years is the hiring of Joanne Trahanis as our curriculum director. We finally have a thorough review of all of our curriculum and a curriculum evaluation calendar. The science is set to be evaluated in 2013, 2014. We've already gone through the math evaluation and have implemented a new program, including bringing in the Common Core standards, which are raising the level of performance expectations. I actually, from speaking with Dr. Sophie, have heard that some of the Lake Forest teachers actually have been visiting the Lake Bluff Middle School to actually observe our math curriculum. So I think the tide is turning and we're actually leading that in the math field.
We do have good schools, and we are being led by a very strong superintendent. So I think we are absolutely headed in the right direction on this point. I was disturbed to learn that my middle schooler had language arts every day, but had math only every other day under the current system that we have. That was alarming to me because I do believe that math and science are so critical to the global future. I understand that that now is changing, and we're going to go to a system where they do have math class every day, so I view that as something very positive. I would like to see greater coordination with the Lake Forest High School. You can listen to different reports and get a different sense of whether our kids go in equally prepared and perform equally well or not. But if there's even the suggestion that they don't, I think that that's something that we need to improve upon. I'm glad to hear that we're getting somebody who's a curriculum specialist. There has been, I think, some fits and starts in getting somebody to fill that position. So I'm glad to hear that we have someone we think is very good, and that this is something we're focused on.
Thank you. This is one of those questions that goes to, only one person need answer it, but if anyone else wants to chime in, they may. The question is, and I think this is to Ms. Brady, since you're currently on the school board, does the core curriculum include the arts?
I appreciate the inclusion of the word arts in curriculum. It's one of the things that Lake Bluff schools have very much been proponent of for many years. I was lucky enough last fall to go down to Chicago and see a production of Les Mis, and there on the stage was one of the Lake Bluff graduates playing Cosette. I read in the news this week that one of our Lake Bluff graduates has just been given an award for her community service. Yes, the core curriculum, there's a state core curriculum, there's also a curriculum that Lake Bluff has. So it will incorporate the core curriculum, but Lake Bluff curriculum will include the arts.
Is there anyone else who wishes to answer that question? No? Then we will go to Mr. Waggoner to answer this next question. Please explain why NSSED is significant and how exactly does District 65 participate? Would you change the district's participation in NSSED and why?
NSSED, the North Shore Special Education District, is an organization that Lake Bluff District 65 participates in a co-op organization. It provides for the special education needs of a number of districts in the North Shore. We collectively fund that district, and the participation of the district is always something that we continue to look at. In her last term, MJ Brady has served on the board of NSSED, and our Board of Education has taken a very close look at the NSSED finances with the eye towards increasing the level of accountability and with the eye of reducing costs, and through all of that engagement with our peer districts on NSSED, we were able to prevail upon the district to reduce administrative overhead and thereby save each district collectively hundreds of thousands of dollars a year in funds.
Thank you. Ms. Letchinger.
I had a conversation regarding that subject with the superintendent, and she explained that yes, they were able to reduce the amount of money we had to give to NSSED. She was also somewhat concerned about the caliber of the service we're getting from them, and also the costs we're being charged for the services. I do not sit on the school board right now. I don't have the details, but clearly it is something that is essential to look at very carefully to make sure that students with special needs do get the maximum help for the best value for the district.
Mr. Hegg.
I was in the same meeting with Chris and Dr. Sophie, not particularly up to date on this particular item, so most of what I learned was from Dr. Sophie, who, as Chris said, explained that there were some questions that she had on it. It's something that I would have to look more closely at. I just don't have the knowledge base right now to comment on it.
Mr. Marozsan?
I don't have anything intelligent to say about this. I'm not knowledgeable about it, and just pass the baton along.
Ms. Amaral?
Thank you. I think we actually are in a very good position thanks to MJ Brady with the current SSAD contract. Special education can be very expensive, and this is a board that consists of board members from all the contributing school districts. So it's really important that whoever on our District 65 school board is a member of the NSSED board is really taking a close look at what's going on, what services we're getting, what member fees were charged. It's also very expensive to send students out of district for these services, and Ann Wirtz has done a great job in our district in trying to provide as many services as possible within our district. So I think we're in a good position now, but it is definitely something that we need to monitor.
Ms. Gottshall?
Certainly the principle that we need to attend to the needs of all of our students is an important principle, and we need to make sure that all of those needs are met. Whether this is the best way to do it or not, I can't speak to. I was in that same meeting with Dr. Sophie. I too heard some reservation about the cost benefit of going through this particular program. I don't have a personal opinion on that. I do wonder if there isn't some lost opportunity to mingle services with Lake Forest and be able to do some more things in-house as a collaborative effort with them, but I certainly don't have an opinion on that now.
Ms. Brady?
As Kate said, we have an incredibly talented Director of Special Services in our district, in Ann Wirtz, and she has been very thoughtful in her placement of students, in her direction of IEPs, and in her budget formation each year. To clarify, we are a member of the North Suburban Special Education District, along with 17 other districts on the North Shore. There is a governing board of 18 members, one of which from each board, each school board. Some of our children, some of our students do receive their services at NSSED. Many of our students receive their services inside our district, and Dr. Wirtz has worked diligently to bring as many kids back into district as she can. There are also other students who are in outside placements in various other places that are not part of NSSED, and Ann Wirtz works very hard to find the best placement in the most fiscally responsible way for all the students of District 65.
Thank you. And thank you for your responses. Our afternoon is winding down, so we will now begin with closing statements, and we will go in reverse order, starting with Mr. Waggoner, and then to Ms. Brady and down the line in reverse order.
Thank you, Melanie, Rummel, and the League of Women Voters for hosting this exciting event and for the audience participation. We've heard a diversity of views today, and we've engaged in a healthy debate about what it takes to achieve success for a school district and its community. MJ Brady, Kate Amaral, and I have what it takes to achieve that success. With strong service on the PTO and school board, we have volunteered countless hours of our time and energy promoting our schools and community of Lake Bluff, Knollwood, in our unincorporated areas. We were recently named one of the nation's best seaside towns, not just for our lake views and vibrant downtown, but also for our top-notch schools. Do we want to continue to remain one of the nation's premier destination communities? Do we want to continue to promote high property values and first-rate academics? You, the voters, have to make that decision. Kate Amaral, MJ Brady, and I ask for your vote in this school board election, and in exchange, we pledge to continue our record of success on your behalf. Vote for Smart Choices 65. Thank you.
Ms. Brady.
Once again, I too would like to thank the League of Women Voters for their civic commitment. It's important to have an organization truly committed by its bylaws and protocols to the welfare of the community. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen of District 65, for your attention this afternoon. I hope you've all had a chance to closely consider the evidence here today as we've presented ourselves to you. I will ask you as you go home, think about what you've heard today and think about which of us would best represent you on our school board. I've been on the school board for 5 years, and I wish to continue energetically serving you in the community. I'm committed to our future by focusing on two basic tenets: excellent educational opportunity and sound fiscal management. I'm actually connected to all the issues confronting each of us relative to our schools. And I have the time and the drive and the willingness to interact with you and to execute on your concerns and ideas. I'm not looking to diminish, but to improve. And speaking of his desire to enhance public education, Abraham Lincoln observed, "Upon the subject of education, I can only say that I view it as the most important subject which we as a people can be engaged in. For my part, I desire to see the time when education, by its means, morality, sobriety, enterprise, and industry, shall become much more general. And I should be gratified to have it in my power to contribute something to the advancement of any measure which might which might have a tendency to accelerate that happy period. I too look forward to helping reach that happy period." Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gottshall.
Thank you. Thank you all, and thanks in particular to the members of the caucus out there. The four of us, Christine, Richard, John, and I, are part of the caucus recommended slate. I did appear before the caucus, as we did all. It was a very, I think, thorough vetting process, and I am privileged to sit up here before you, having gone through and gotten the endorsement of that group. I think it's a way to really encourage the participation of many, many people and leverage all of the different skill sets that are in our community. Our motto is academics and accountability, and we chose this very carefully and thoughtfully, and I think with the values reflected in the proper order. Academics is very important. I've spent a lot of time with the other members on my slate, and I know that there has been an issue made of the fact that they don't have children in the schools. I do. And I wouldn't do anything, nor would I endorse anybody that I thought for a minute would jeopardize at all the best education possible for our town. So I can tell you, having spent time with the rest of the slate, that this is a very dearly held value. But the second word is important too: accountability. And we sit before you, having gone through the vetting process, with a real commitment to the community to keep things visible, to have good communication, to watch the accounting as well. And so we are committed to all of those principles. I would ask for your vote not only on behalf of myself, but on the rest of my slate. I will close on a lighter note by telling you that sometimes the viability of your candidacy is reflected not only in who endorses you, but in who doesn't. I do not have the endorsement of my 12-year-old. She tells me that I will make school harder and take away all the fun stuff like Wacky Wednesdays and the good cookies in the cafeteria. But I assure you the cookies at least are safe with me. So thank you.
Ms. Amaral.
Thank you again, Melanie Rummel and the League of Women Voters, excuse me, and their commitment to informing voters and upholding the democratic process. When you go to the polls on April 9th, and please go to the polls on April 9th, I hope you will vote for experience and continuity on your school board. Our district finally has the strong leadership it needs and is poised for greatness, should it not be waylaid by inexperience and micromanagement. Being a homeowner, a taxpayer, and a parent of students in the district will ensure a balanced approach towards creating the best schools on the North Shore in a fiscally responsible manner. Thank you.
Mr. Marozsan.
I would also like to thank the League of Women Voters and the caucus for their recommendations. You know, the school board faces some significant challenges in the upcoming years. We're currently spending $20,000 per student. It's about $5,000 more than Lake Forest. Multiply that times 800 students, about $4 million more. Our scores aren't that much better. So I think that the board, we have a high fund balance we have to address. We have bond issues we need to address as well. We need people on this board with a focus on providing the best education possible to our kids, but also with financial and business skills to help navigate the challenges ahead. We need to be proactive about addressing serious budget and debt issues. All residents of Lake Bluff are expecting us to be good stewards of the $16 million they entrust us with. The board should protect the interest of all taxpayers while focusing these monies toward instruction. We need a comprehensive plan, as I indicated earlier. We need a more open and balanced board. You know, we have 77% of the people in Lake Bluff pay taxes toward the schools, and we're all very grateful to do that. But we have no representation. We're one of the few school boards on the entire North Shore with no representation from those taxpayers. We pay taxes, we need representation. We need a balanced board, and I believe that our slate brings balance, skills, diversity, experience. As a group, I think we can bring a very positive benefit to the schools of Lake Bluff.
Mr. Hegg.
I'm going to tell you a short story. When I was 25 years old working for ITT, I had a very bright boss. He was no slouch. In fact, he'd grown up in Lake Bluff, gone to Lake Forest High School, and on to Princeton University. And when I decided that I thought I needed to invest in a home, he immediately got me in touch with the Lake Bluff realtor. Obviously, I was at the very low end of buying a house. One day the realtor called me and said, I finally found one. So I go out to it. It's absolutely a disaster. I can't believe anybody would pay to live in this place. And so after looking at it, it was the first day it was on the market. I go outside. The driveway is full of people with their realtors ready to look at the house. I said, Bob, what is the deal with this? He said one word, schools. At a very early age, I understood the relationship between real estate values and good schools. The relationship has never left me, but that's only one reason we need a superior school district. Young families are the lifeblood of this community, and we must continually attract these young professionals. But we need a balance of a superior school system with some fair and competitive tax rates. And I don't see these two things to be mutually exclusive, but they're going to have to require a very, very strong board to set the policy with great oversight.
Ms. Letchinger.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming on this beautiful Sunday. Our schools are good, no doubt about that. They should be great, period. Interestingly enough, if you look at the demographic statistics from the latest census, you will find that a very large proportion of people in these towns have not only graduated from college, but also have post-grad degrees. Usually in communities where you have this sort of demographics, you have outstanding schools. And while the rankings can be looked at and the fluctuation analyzed, and maybe you decide, well, this is not really valid, there's a long-term trend. We are not as good as we used to be. During the same period, the budget has increased substantially while the population, the student population has decreased. The bottom line is that we are very expensive. That outcome is not favorable either for the students or for the community at large. The addition of the real estate tax burden, and as village president, I hear it every day. Every time I go to Jewel or Sunset Food, somebody will stop me and say, what is the matter with the real estate taxes? The problem with the real estate taxes is that it prevents young family with kids to get into the school system, and it compounds existing demographic tendency. The declining enrollment is not good for the school, and the tax burden is not good for the elder resident.
Thank you.
I and my fellow caucus candidate would like your support, so together we can realize the potential of our school and have the school that we deserve.
Thank you. On behalf of the League of Women Voters and the American Association of University Women, I want to thank everyone here for putting their names forward to hold public office. You're all to be applauded. And my last announcement is please remember to vote on April 9th, and thank you for coming.
Why do we have to vote in Liberty?